Long before maps gave it a name, Greenland was a vast and silent world of ice, rock, and sea. The first humans who reached its shores did not come seeking conquest or glory. They came in search of survival. Thousands of years ago, small groups of Arctic peoples crossed from North America, following animals, seasons, and the rhythm of the ice. These early inhabitants learned how to live with the cold rather than fight it. They built tools from stone and bone, hunted seals and caribou, and read the land with remarkable skill. Greenland was harsh, but it was not empty. It was alive with meaning. Over time, different waves of Inuit cultures settled across the island. Each group adapted to changing climates, developing kayaks, harpoons, and communal traditions that allowed them to endure long winters and brief summers. Their history was not written in books, but carried in stories, songs, and daily practices. Greenland was their home, shaped by memory and experience rather than borders. Centuries later, the quiet balance of this world was disrupted. From across the Atlantic came Norse sailors, driven by curiosity, exile, and ambition. Led by Eric the Red, they arrived on the southwestern coast and gave the island a hopeful name. Greenland, the Greenland, was meant to attract settlers and promise opportunity. For a time, Norse farms, churches, and trade routes took root alongside the older Inuit presence. Yet from the very beginning, Greenland tested everyone who tried to claim it. Climate, distance, and isolation would shape its destiny, setting the stage for a long and complex history that was only just beginning. As years passed, the Norse settlements in Greenland became tightly woven into the wider medieval world. Churches were built, bishops were appointed, and Christianity shaped daily life. Greenland was no longer only a distant outpost. It was connected to Europe through trade, belief, and authority. Ships carried walrus ivory, hides, and ropes back across the sea, while timber, iron, and luxury goods returned in exchange. These fragile connections were vital because Greenland itself offered little wood or metal. Life for the Norse was demanding. Farming depended on short summers, and survival required careful planning and cooperation. Cattle, sheep, and goats grazed during brief, warm months, while winter forced people indoors for long periods of darkness. The Inuit continued to thrive through hunting and mobility, but the Norse lifestyle relied heavily on agriculture and imported resources. Two different ways of life existed on the same island, rarely blending. Over time, the climate began to change. Colder temperatures shortened growing seasons and made sea travel more dangerous. Trade with Europe became less frequent, and isolation increased. As ships stopped arriving, the Norse communities grew weaker. Archaeological evidence suggests shortages of food and materials, along with increasing hardship. By the 15th century, the Norse settlements had vanished. No written record explains their final years. Some may have left, others may have perished. What remains are ruins of churches and farms, silent witnesses to a society that could not adapt fast enough. The Inuit endured, carrying Greenland forward into a new chapter shaped by resilience rather than collapse. For centuries after the Norse disappeared, Greenland faded from European awareness. On maps, it remained a distant name, wrapped in legend and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Inuit communities continued their lives along the coasts, hunting, traveling, and passing down knowledge through generations. Greenland endured without kings or bishops, guided instead by the wisdom of experience and the demands of nature. In the early 18th century, Europe returned. This time, the arrival came with prayer books, royal orders, and new intentions. A Norwegian-Danish missionary named Hans Egede believed that the Old Norse settlers or their descendants might still be living on the island. Driven by faith and loyalty to the crown, he sailed north with his family and a small group of settlers. When they landed, they did not find lost Europeans. They found Inuit communities whose world was very different from what Egede expected. Although his original mission failed, a new chapter began. The Kingdom of Denmark established a permanent presence in Greenland, combining religious work with trade and administration. Missionaries sought to convert the Inuit to Christianity, while traders focused on sealskins, whale products, and other Arctic resources. Danish authority slowly expanded along the coast, often depending on cooperation with local communities. This period reshaped Greenland deeply. Inuit traditions adapted under outside influence, as new beliefs, languages, and economic systems took hold. At the same time, Greenland became firmly tied to the Danish state. What had once been a distant and forgotten land was now drawn into European power and global networks, setting a foundation that would shape its future for centuries to come. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, Greenland was firmly controlled as a Danish colony. Decisions about trade, education, and governance were made far away in Copenhagen. Danish officials believed they were protecting Greenland and its people by limiting foreign contact. Trade was strictly regulated, and modernization came slowly. Inuit society continued to rely on hunting and fishing, while Danish culture increasingly shaped administration, schooling, and religion. The Second World War changed everything. When Denmark was occupied by Germany, Greenland was suddenly cut off from its colonial center. Supplies and support came instead from North America, especially the United States. Airfields and weather stations were built, and Greenland became strategically important in the North Atlantic. This brief period of separation showed that Greenland could function with greater independence, even under difficult circumstances. After the war, Denmark sought to modernize Greenland rapidly. New housing, healthcare, and education systems were introduced, often with good intentions. However, these changes disrupted traditional life. Many Inuit were moved from small settlements into larger towns, and the Danish language gained dominance. While living standards improved in some ways, cultural loss and social challenges followed. By the mid-20th century, Greenlanders began to question their position within the Danish state. Calls for recognition, equality, and self-determination grew stronger. Greenland was no longer just a colony. It was becoming a society aware of its own identity and rights, preparing for a new political transformation. The late 20th century opened a new chapter in Greenland's long story. After generations of colonial rule, Greenlanders gained home rule in 1979. This moment marked a shift from governance imposed from afar toward leadership rooted in the island itself. Control over education, health, culture, and local affairs moved into Greenlandic hands. The Greenlandic language gained official recognition, and a renewed pride in Inuit identity began to shape public life. History was no longer only something inherited. It became something actively reclaimed. 3 decades later, this transformation deepened. In 2009, self-rule was introduced, expanding Greenland's authority over its own future. Greenland took responsibility for its courts, police, and natural resources, while Denmark retained control over defense and foreign policy. Most importantly, the agreement recognized the Greenlandic people as a people with the right to self-determination under international law. Independence was no longer a distant dream, but a real possibility, shaped by careful political choice. At the same time, the Arctic itself was changing. Rising temperatures began to melt ice that had defined Greenland for thousands of years. New shipping routes, fishing opportunities, and mineral resources attracted global attention. With opportunity came risk. Greenland faced complex decisions about development, environmental protection, and cultural preservation. Today, Greenland stands between past and future. Its history of endurance, contact, loss, and renewal informs every debate about what comes next. From ancient hunters to modern lawmakers, the story of Greenland continues, shaped by the same forces that have always defined it: survival, adaptation, and the search for a path of its own.